Imagine you're standing in a pitch black room holding a small flashlight. The beam of light cuts through the dark and creates a neat bright circle on the wall in front of you. Inside that circle is everything you currently know about the world. Outside that circle, in the absolute darkness, is everything you don't know. Naturally, you assume that if you study, read, and gather more information, your circle of light will grow. And the crazy part is it does. But as that circle expands, pay close attention to what happens to its boundary, the perimeter, the exact edge where the light meets the darkness. It'll get longer and longer. This is the foundational paradox of human knowledge. The more your light expands, the more darkness you are forced to confront. The more you learn, the more you realize you know absolutely nothing. We live in an era that completely worships the accumulation of data. We mistake memory for intelligence, and we mistake immediate access to search engines for actual wisdom. We are drowning in facts, yet starving for understanding. But true knowledge carries a strange psychological penalty. It doesn't make you feel more confident, it makes you feel deeply uncertain. Today, we are going to unpack the exact architecture of this mental trap. We'll look at why true experts suffer from crippling self-doubt, while complete beginners scream with absolute certainty. We'll explore why knowing too much can completely paralyze your ability to make a simple decision, and finally, the dark evolutionary framework that shapes how we process objective reality. In psychology, this exact phenomenon is mapped out by a famous framework known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. Most people on the internet use this term as a polite way of calling someone stupid, but the actual science behind it is much more unsettling. Look closely at the very beginning of the graph. When a person learns just a tiny bit of information about a complex subject, say, they watch a single 10-minute video or read a viral thread, their confidence immediately skyrockets to 100%. Psychologists literally call this peak Mount Stupid. Because this person knows so little, they completely lack the cognitive skills required to see how deep the subject actually is. They believe the world is simple, answers are obvious, and anyone who disagrees with them is either corrupt or an idiot. They feel like a genius because their circle of light is so small they can't even see the darkness surrounding it. But watch what happens when you keep learning. As you gather real data, read the foundational literature, and uncover the messy nuances, your confidence doesn't just go up, it crashes completely into the dirt. Welcome to the Valley of Despair. This is where the paradox of knowing too much claims its first victims. When you become deeply knowledgeable, you start seeing the expectations to every single rule. You realize that every fact has conditions, every history has two sides, and every system is incredibly fragile. This isn't a modern glitch, it's an ancient human truth. When the ancient oracle at Delphi declared Socrates the wisest man in Athens, Socrates assumed it was a mistake. He went to the most powerful politicians, poets, and craftsmen in the city, questioning them about truth and justice. He discovered that they all thought they knew everything, when they actually knew very little. Socrates realized his only advantage was that he was completely aware of his own ignorance. But in a hyper-connected world, being aware of your own ignorance doesn't make you a philosopher. It can completely freeze your brain. This brings us to the practical danger of the paradox, analysis paralysis. When you know nothing about a subject, making a decision is incredibly easy because you only see one path. If you want to fix a problem, you just pick the first solution you see and run with it. But when you become highly knowledgeable, your brain maps out a massive chessboard of consequences. If you do option A, you risk outcome X. If you choose option B, you trigger chain reaction Y. Suddenly, a simple choice becomes a nightmare. You begin to overthink every variable, anticipate every failure, and second guess your own instincts. The weight of your information builds a cage around the capacity to act. Think about the world's greatest inventors, scientists, or strategists. They rarely speak in absolutes. They don't say, "this will happen." They say, "there's a 62% probability of this happening," assuming that these four variables remain constant. To the untrained ear, this sounds like a weakness or hesitation. People look at the expert and think, why can't they just give me a straight answer? Meanwhile, they look at a charismatic amateur on Mount Stupid who yells with absolute unwavering conviction, and they think now that is a leader. Society actively rewards the illusion of certainty, which means the most knowledgeable people are often pushed to the sidelines simply because they are too honest to pretend the world is simple. But the trap goes much deeper than just isolation. In the digital age, the paradox of knowing too much has evolved a terrifying new symptom: algorithmic mimicry. Historically, the curse of knowledge meant that experts simply struggled to communicate with beginners. They spoke in jargon, grew frustrated, and retreated to their academic towers. But today, the towers are gone. Everyone lives on the same digital feed, governed by the same exact algorithms, and those algorithms treat nuance like a disease. To get distribution, to be heard, to survive financially, you have to feed a machine that only consumes absolute certainty, outrage, and 8-second hooks. This creates a phenomenon known as cognitive flattening. To see this play out in real time, look no further than your own feed. Picture a seasoned epidemiologist trying to explain a complex public health event. They look into the camera and say, based on current data, we have a moderate probability of a localized outbreak through there are 12 competing variables we cannot yet account for. The video gets 400 views. It is buried by the platform. Now look at the right side of your screen. A charismatic amateur watches that same press release, cuts a video, slaps a hyper-saturated thumbnail on it, and screams into a microphone, "They are lying to you, this is exactly what happens next." It instantly gets 10 million views. Real experts, people who spent decades analyzing the endless gray areas of economics, medicine, or geopolitics, are watching this happen every single day. They are forced to make a sinister choice. They can either stay completely silent and become irrelevant, or they can consciously perform a lobotomy on their own intelligence. They are forced to adopt algorithmic mimicry. They start mimicking the behaviors of the people on Mount Stupid. They strip away the caveats, they engineer false confidence, they compress complex truths into weaponized headlines because they know that the machine will starve them if they don't. We aren't just drowning in ignorance, we are actively corrupting our best minds by rewarding them for pretending to be stupider and more certain than they actually are. The true isolation of the modern expert isn't that nobody understands them, it's that they are forced to participate in the destruction of nuance just to buy a seat at the table. So how do we navigate a world built on a foundation of manufactured certainty? The traditional answer lies in understanding a famous philosophical principle: the map is not the territory. The scholar Alfred Zorbitsky, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but he pointed out that no matter how detailed a map is, it is just a piece of paper. It is an abstraction, it is not the actual dirt, the trees, or the wind of the real world. The paradox of knowing too much happens when we confuse our mental maps for reality. We accumulate thousands of theories, facts, and models until we think we understand the world perfectly from inside our rooms. Well, let's be entirely honest with ourselves. Understanding that the map is incomplete doesn't fix the problem. In fact, it makes it worse. Once you realize your mental map will never reach the terrifying, chaotic reality of the territory, you're forced to confront a deeply unsettling possibility that from an evolutionary perspective, objective truth might actually be a survival liability. Think about it this way: human biology did not evolve to perceive ultimate reality, we evolved to survive. And survive really rewards the paralyzing weight of total objectivity. It rewards quick, decisive, group-based action. Imagine two ancient tribes confronting a strange, dark forest. The leader of the first tribe is an expert. They analyze the terrain, map out the venomous flora, calculate the weather patterns, and hesitate, trapped by the terrifying awareness of everything they don't know. The leader of the second tribe stands on Mount Stupid. They possess no data, feel no doubt, beat their chest, yell a simple rallying cry, and charge forward blindly. This thought experiment suggests a harsh selective paradigm. The confident fool might occasionally stumble their way into survival simply because they acted, while the paralyzed intellectual could easily be left behind by history. If you are currently in the valley of despair, overwhelmed by how much you don't know, second guessing every choice. Stop looking for an inspirational exit. This uncertainty isn't a temporary phase you get to fix with a bit more reading. It is the permanent psychological tax of choosing to see clearly. The light of your flashlight was never meant to conquer the darkness. The darkness is infinite. The more you know, the more the cage of your own ignorance shrinks around you. Your choice was never between ignorance and wisdom. Your choice is between the comfortable, highly rewarded lies of Mount Stupid or the paralyzing, lonely reality of the dark. Choose carefully, because once your circle of light expands, you can never make it small again. Anyways, that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys enjoyed and learned something, please leave a comment and just share your thoughts. If you're ever trying to climb the mountain or you're stuck in the valley, just, you'll find a way, or maybe you won't, or maybe you will. I guess you'll never know until you seek it for yourself. Anyways, that's it. Xylin out.